Hello and welcome to my presentation on the Lower Kanawha Watershed. This presentation is going to detail the location, the identity of the designated uses and applicable water criteria, the 303D listing of several streams in the area, any TMDL plans for the water stream, which is available, the health of the watershed using water quality and biological data, the NDPS permits in the area, as well as how well they are adhered to, and any other miscellaneous data which applies to the watershed. I hope you enjoy, so sit back and hopefully enjoy. The Lower Kanawha Watershed is located in Central West Virginia, Region 4 of the state, next to the Elk, Upper Kanawha, Cole, Lower Wyandotte, Lower Ohio, Middle Ohio South, and the Little Kanawha, as well as the Upper Kanawha, both of which are heavily connected to the waterbed due to sharing the Kanawha River. This, of course, carries the lower part of the Kanawha River and covers an estimated 924 square miles. It encompasses Cabell, Jackson, Roane, Mason, Kanawha, and Putnam counties and has an estimated population of 100,602 as of 2013. The Lower Kanawha is sparsely populated, largely rural, and largely covered by trees. An estimated 70% of the land area is covered by trees and forests, another 9.7% covered by pasture and grassland, and then another 5% that is covered by impervious structures. Impervious structures including everything from cities, roads, parking lots, and all kinds of other developed strata, mostly human construction or human creations. Most of the population lives in these rural areas, with only 4 of the cities making up 30% of the population, meaning that the population is largely dispersed throughout population centers that are rural in nature or sometimes suburban, but largely rural. And these rural areas carry a lot of problems, namely that they have underdeveloped sewage systems. Many of the more remote sewage systems are understaffed and under-repaired, and some rural areas even have no sewage systems available to them at all, often resorting to septic tanks and other sorts of non-mainline sewage systems to deal with their sewage. This fecal discharge is due to the rural areas largely having underdeveloped sewage systems, many of them relying on non-mainline systems such as septic tanks. This results in some septic tanks being older and more run down, meaning that sewage is slowly released into the surrounding environment. And others is just a simple case of they don't have the capacity to treat the water as well, meaning that more sewage ends up untreated into the water system. As well, oil and gas wells have been developed with the discovery of the Marcellus Shale, which has been causing other assorted problems. And to top it all off, chemical runoff from other sources, usually upstream of the Kanawha River, has led to the Lower Kanawha getting much of the chemical rundown into the area. Many of the streams at Lower Kanawha are 303D listed. 303D listing is generally a practice that shows that a stream is unsafe for human usage for anything, ranging from drinking water to swimming or anything in between. Usually this means that there is an unsafe amount of pollution or contaminants of certain varieties in the water, making it unsuitable for such uses. And this is the case for the Lower Kanawha. Many of the streams in the Lower Kanawha are 303D listed, usually due to unsafe presences of bacteria and fecal matter in the water, doubling the amount that is recommended for fecal matter in the water and the amount of bacteria in the water as well. Some streams are also impacted by chemical spill or acidity from oil and gas mining, or sometimes as runoff from upstream, as the canal has many chemical producing factories along it, which sometimes end up discharging or spilling into the canal, which can come downstream and affect many of the tributaries of the Kanawha River, including those in the Lower Kanawha. In the 22 sub-watersheds of the Lower Kanawha that were identified as having impacted streams, 221 of the streams were listed as impaired. Many of these were listed as impaired due to the aforementioned bacteria causes and fecal matter, but some were also metal impaired or chemically impaired, and a small amount were also pH impaired, which is something we'll get into later. Of these 221 streams that were listed impaired, they are often due to fecal matter, bacteria resulting from the fecal matter, chemical contamination, usually caused by the oil and gas wells that were around, or sometimes due to chemical spills that have come downriver, or heavy metal contamination, which was usually due to abandoned mines and their excavation material that were left behind having rainwater leak into it, and the heavy metals that were contained within being deposited into streams. The undeveloped rural sewage, oil, and gas wells, as well as abandoned mines and other miscellaneous sources, are largely the causes of these contaminants in the water. And since aluminum had no source pollution because of the nature of its contamination being part of the excavated material from abandoned mines, there was no single point solution for point source contamination point where it was occurring, so no mapping was created to identify it. However, it is in some watersheds, so I find it worthy to mention here. The goals for recovery of these streams is to primarily affect the amount of fecal matter that's in the streams, because this both causes the presence of fecal matter as well as bacteria colonies, with bacteria colonies being the overwhelming issue due to its ability to spread more easily. The main goal of the TMDLs is to affect the bacteria, bringing it down from the current 400 per colonies per 100 milliliters to the more acceptable 200 colonies per 100 milliliter. It also wants to create a mitigation policy for heavy metals due to the abandoned mines, as well as ways to combat the runoff from the mines. And the ultimate goal, having most of the streams of the watershed servable by 2040. They aim to complete these goals by financing the creation of a new sewer disposal site so as to reduce the strain on fecal matter in the waters and overhaul the existing infrastructure so that no more fecal matter escapes in the current infrastructure out into the surrounding areas. This includes both the rural areas which have septic tanks as well as the more mainline pipes that were developed for the inner cities. A new monitoring agency to ensure the treatment plants adequately dispose of the waste matter before it enters the watershed so as to enforce the above, and reviewing the results and modifying the policy on a year-by-year basis to ensure that they respond to the evolving situation as the treatment continues. As previously stated, the overall health of the canal is unhealthy due to the overwhelming presence of fecal matter as well as other contaminants and the associated bacteria in the watershed. This promotes algal blooms as well as infections being more common due to large presence of bacteria colonies in the area. And the presence of fecal matter is largely coming from the undeveloped sewer system, which means that people are getting unsafe water in their water systems, which could also come back as animals getting sick from drinking the water, or even contamination of their homes due to flooding. In addition to all this, mining of oil and natural gas from the Marcellus Shale has impacted the area by causing some amount of mineral runoff as well as pH issues in the water, including the pH lowering to a point where many of the surrounding streams are acidic to the point where it can no longer support life. Abandoned mines and the runoff from both the mine itself and the excavated material causes large amounts of pollution of heavy metals in very specific affected streams, which generally tends to stay within those streams, but can also end up getting downstream and affecting other bodies of water. Chemical spills upriver are also making their way into the Lower Kanawha River, which is in turn making life worse for the surrounding streams. Permitting is less numerous due to the undeveloped nature of the area, but there are 55 active construction sites with a total 1,706.6 acres registered for construction. There's also 5 registered municipal separate storm sewer systems, all of which are run by the associated townships and cities that govern them. There are 1,150 active, or 1,587 acres, of oil and gas wells in the metal impaired streams, in and around, I should say, and as well as many other permits for things such as roads, agriculture, and other sources of pollution, which are considered to be minor contributors to the TMDLs. Of course, this permitting has seen some violations, with many of the sewer systems, as aforementioned, being quite undeveloped and often run down, leading to a lot of sewage leakage into the surrounding areas, causing fecal matter pollution. Several of the abandoned mines have had their excavation material lead to metal runoff into other streams, which is a violation. And several of the defunct oil and natural gas wells are inadequately sealed and have seen some polluted water that was used to fill up the area left behind whenever the natural gas and oil was extracted with water, which just ended up being contaminated and starting to seep through the more porous ground into other water bodies, which has also caused contamination. This is the end of my presentation on the Lower Kanawha Watershed. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative, and hopefully learned a thing or two from it. I used a few resources in this presentation, specifically on information, but also a few graphs, of the reports of the Lower Kanawha Watershed Action Plan by the University of Delaware, as well as the US EPA report of the TMDLs for selected streams of the Lower Kanawha River watershed. Without these bodies, I would not have been able to do my work, so I thank them, and I thank you for listening.